You're at a dinner party. Someone casually mentions they just maxed out their 401k for the 12th year in a row. Another person talks about the rental property they bought last summer. A third chimes in about their brokerage account crossing some milestone you didn't even know existed. Meanwhile, you're sitting there doing mental math, trying to remember if you even have a 401k and whether that $8,000 sitting in it counts as retirement savings. You smile politely, you nod along, you say something vague like, "That's great," while reaching for your wine glass. But inside, your stomach is doing that thing where it drops 3 inches and stays there. Later that night, you're lying in bed staring at the ceiling. You can't sleep. You keep replaying the conversation. You keep wondering how everyone else figured out the money thing while you were apparently sleeping through that particular life lesson. The question starts spiraling. Should I have bought a house 5 years ago? Why didn't anyone teach me about investing in my 20s? Is it too late? Am I going to be working until I'm 75? Here's what nobody at that dinner party will admit. Half of them are lying. The guy talking about his rental property didn't mention that it's been vacant for 3 months and bleeding him dry. The woman who maxed out her 401k has $40,000 in credit card debt she's hiding from her husband. The other half are drowning in anxiety just like you, but they've learned to perform confidence because that's what adults apparently do. And the anxious knot in your stomach exists because society handed you a checklist for success, but forgot to mention that the checklist was written in 1985 when houses cost $89,000 and a single income could support a family of 4. The benchmarks you're measuring yourself against are fundamentally broken. They were designed for an economy that no longer exists, yet somehow we still internalize them. We still feel like failures when we hit 40 without hitting those invisible milestones. So today, I'm going to do something uncomfortable. I'm going to show you the actual financial benchmarks for age 40 based on current data. Some of these numbers might make you feel better. Others might genuinely alarm you. But more importantly, I'm going to give you the exact roadmap for catching up, even if you're starting from zero. And here's the part that might surprise you. The people who start late often end up in better positions than the people who started early and coasted. There's a mathematical reason for this that I'll break down around the halfway point of this video. It has to do with something called contribution intensity. And once you understand it, you'll realize that your 40s might actually be the most powerful wealth building decade of your entire life. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth that financial advisors love to throw around. By age 40, conventional wisdom says you should have 3 times your annual salary saved for retirement. Earning $80,000 a year means you should have $240,000 tucked away in retirement accounts. Sounds reasonable when you say it fast. The reality is brutally different. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median retirement savings for Americans aged 35 to 44 is approximately $45,000. Let me repeat that because it's important. The median, meaning half of all Americans in this age group, have less than $45,000 saved for retirement. That's nowhere close to 3 times their salary. That's barely 3 months of salary for most people. So if you're sitting there with $30,000 or $60,000 or even $100,000 saved, you're actually doing better than most of your peers. The benchmarks that make you feel like a failure were created by financial institutions that profit from your anxiety. They want you to feel behind, so you'll buy their products, hire their advisors, and pay their fees. However, this doesn't mean you should settle for average. An average in America means retiring with barely enough to survive. It means working until 67 and then hoping Social Security doesn't collapse before you die. The goal isn't to beat your neighbors. The goal is to build genuine financial security. Those are 2 very different objectives. Let's break down what the realistic age 40 benchmarks actually look like in 2025, adjusted for the economic reality that most of us live in. The first benchmark involves retirement savings. A more achievable, yet still meaningful target is 1.5 to 2 times your annual salary by 40. Earning $70,000 means you should aim for $150,000 to $140,000 in retirement accounts. This puts you on track to retire with dignity, assuming you continue contributing throughout your 40s and 50s when your earning power typically peaks. Here's why this number matters more than you might think. At age 40, with $120,000 invested, even if you never contributed another penny, that money would grow to approximately $780,000 by age 65 at an 8% average return. You wouldn't be wealthy, but you'd have something. Add continued contributions throughout your 40s and 50s, and you're looking at a genuinely comfortable retirement. The second benchmark concerns emergency savings. You should have 3 to 6 months of essential expenses sitting in a high-yield savings account. Essential expenses means rent or mortgage, utilities, food, insurance, and transportation. For most households, this works out to somewhere between $12,000 and $25,000 in liquid savings that you can access within 24 hours. Here's a critical distinction that trips people up. Your emergency fund isn't your vacation fund. It's not your new car fund. It's not money you dip into when you want something but don't want to put it on a credit card. It's money that exists solely to prevent financial catastrophe when life throws a wrench into your plans. Job loss, medical emergency, major home repair. That's what this money is for. The third benchmark relates to debt. By 40, you should have eliminated all high-interest consumer debt. Credit cards charging 20% interest should be paid off entirely. Student loans should be either eliminated or on a clear payoff trajectory. Personal loans and financing plans should be gone. Your only remaining debt should be your mortgage and potentially a reasonable car payment, ideally at an interest rate below 6%. I want to be direct about something here. If you're 40 and still carrying credit card balances month to month, this is a 5-alarm fire that needs addressing before anything else. Credit card interest compounds against you with the same mathematical force that investment returns compound for you. Every month you carry a balance. You're swimming against a current that's specifically designed to keep you in place. The fourth benchmark addresses income. Your salary at 40 should represent a significant jump from where you started. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggests that peak earning years typically fall between 45 and 54. By 40, you should be earning at least 30% more than you were earning at 30 in real inflation-adjusted dollars. If you're not, something has gone wrong with your career trajectory that needs addressing. Why, this isn't about ambition or climbing corporate ladders for the sake of status. It's about mathematics. Your ability to build wealth is fundamentally constrained by your income. Someone earning $50,000 who saves 20% of their income is saving $10,000 per year. Someone earning $100,000 who saves the same percentage is saving $20,000 over a 25-year period. That difference compounds into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now let's talk about what happens when you look at these benchmarks and realize you're behind on several of them. Maybe you're behind on all of them. The instinct is to panic. The instinct is to feel like you've wasted the last decade and there's no way to recover. You might even feel a strange urge to just give up, to accept that retirement will be a struggle and there's nothing to be done about it. This is where that mathematical truth I mentioned earlier becomes crucial. Catching up in your 40s is actually easier than building from scratch in your 20s. There are several interconnected reasons for this phenomenon. First, your earning power is higher. The average 40-year-old earns significantly more than the average 25-year-old. This means you have more raw material to work with when building wealth. A 25-year-old might only be able to invest $300 per month. A 40-year-old with an established career might be able to invest $1,500 or $2,000. That difference in contribution intensity matters enormously. Second, your expenses often stabilize or even decrease. Your student loans might be paid off. Your career wardrobe is established. You're past the phase of furnishing apartments from scratch every time you move. You've made most of the major purchases that young adults make. The treadmill of acquisition slows down if you let it. Third, you're finally old enough to actually understand money. Most people in their 20s invest without really comprehending what they're doing. They pick random funds because the names sound good. They panic during market drops and sell at the worst possible time. They cash out their 401k when changing jobs because they want the money now. By 40, you've seen enough economic cycles to develop the emotional resilience that successful long-term investing requires. You've watched the market crash and recover. You understand viscerally that volatility is the price of admission for long-term returns. Let me introduce you to someone I'll call Marcus. His story illustrates exactly how the catch-up game works when you play it correctly. Marcus hit 40 with $22,000 in retirement savings, a car payment, and about $8,000 in credit card debt. He was earning $85,000, but felt like he was barely keeping his head above water. Every month seemed to end with roughly the same amount in his checking account, regardless of whether he tried to save or not. By every traditional measure, Marcus was failing. He'd spent his 30s in a fog of lifestyle inflation. Every raise got absorbed by a slightly nicer apartment, slightly better restaurants, slightly more expensive hobbies. He wasn't being irresponsible in any obvious way. He just wasn't being intentional. Money came in, money went out, and a decade passed. Over the following 7 years, Marcus executed a catch-up strategy that completely transformed his financial picture. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't receive an inheritance. He didn't start a wildly successful side business. He simply followed a systematic approach that prioritized the highest impact actions first. Here's what Marcus did, and here's what you can replicate regardless of where you're starting from. The first phase involved stopping the bleeding. Marcus spent one weekend doing a complete audit of his monthly expenses. He printed out 3 months of bank and credit card statements. He went through every single transaction with a highlighter. What he discovered shocked him. He was paying for 3 streaming services he barely used: a gym membership he hadn't touched in 8 months, subscription boxes that went straight to his closet, and a premium Spotify account when the free version would have been fine. These small recurring charges totaled $340 per month. That's over $4,000 per year that was essentially evaporating into services he didn't use or value. He also refinanced his car loan from 8.9% interest to 4.2%, which saved him $127 per month without changing his car or his lifestyle. Within 30 days, Marcus had freed up nearly $500 per month through pure optimization. No sacrifice required, no lifestyle change, just eliminating waste he hadn't even noticed. The second phase focused on debt elimination. Marcus threw every extra dollar at his credit card balance. He didn't invest during this phase. He didn't save beyond a minimal emergency fund of $2,000. He attacked the debt with single-minded intensity because credit card interest is a guaranteed negative 20% return on your money. No investment can reliably compete with that guaranteed loss. He used a strategy called the debt avalanche, targeting the highest interest rate first rather than the smallest balance. Mathematically, this saves the most money. Some people prefer the psychological wins of paying off small balances first, and that's fine too. What matters is picking a strategy and executing it relentlessly. 8 months later, the credit card debt was gone. Marcus now had that original $500 plus the $350 he'd been paying toward credit card minimums. That's $850 per month freed up for wealth building. The third phase involved building a proper emergency fund. Before investing aggressively, Marcus needed a buffer against life's inevitable surprises. He spent 4 months building his emergency fund from $2,000 to $15,000, which represented about 4 months of essential expenses. This step might seem like a delay in the wealth building process. In reality, it's foundational. Without an emergency fund, any unexpected expense forces you back into debt. You end up on a treadmill where you pay off credit cards, something happens, you rack up debt again, and the cycle repeats endlessly. The emergency fund breaks that cycle permanently. The fourth phase introduced the catch-up contribution advantage. This is where being over 40 actually helps you. The IRS allows catch-up contributions to retirement accounts starting at age 50. The regular 401k limit might be around $23,000 annually, but those 50 and older can contribute an additional $7,500 on top of that. Marcus was 42 when he started, giving him 8 years to build momentum before accessing this superpower. He maxed out his employer match immediately, which was essentially a 50% instant return on his contributions. His company matched 50 cents on every dollar up to 6% of his salary. He'd been leaving thousands of dollars on the table for years without realizing it. Then he increased his contribution rate by 1% every 6 months. This gradual approach prevented lifestyle shock while steadily accelerating his savings rate. By age 45, he was contributing 18% of his salary to retirement accounts. He barely noticed the difference in his take-home pay because the increases happened slowly enough for his lifestyle to adjust. The fifth phase involved income acceleration. Marcus realized that saving his way to wealth was going to be slow. The real leverage he needed was on the income side. He spent evenings and weekends developing a specialized certification in his industry. It cost him about $3,000 and 6 months of studying. Within 2 years, he had positioned himself for a promotion that increased his salary by $22,000 annually. Here's the key insight that most people miss. Marcus didn't spend that raise. He maintained his existing lifestyle and invested the entire difference. This single decision put an extra $1,400 per month into his investment accounts. Because he'd already adapted to living on his previous salary, the higher income went directly to wealth building. By age 49, 7 years after starting with almost nothing, Marcus had accumulated over $380,000 in retirement savings. He owned his car outright. His only debt was his mortgage, which he was paying extra toward each month. He was on track to retire comfortably at 62 with over $1.2 million in investment assets. The math that made this possible isn't complicated. It's just aggressive during the right window. Consider this calculation carefully. If you're 40 and you invest $2,000 per month at an average return of 8%, you'll have approximately $450,000 by age 55 and over $950,000 by age 62. Start at 45 with the same numbers, and you're looking at $350,000 by 60. The window matters enormously. Yet it's a window that's still very much open at 40. Let me show you why starting late but aggressive often beats starting early but passive. Someone who invests $200 per month from age 25 to 65 at 8% returns ends up with about $700,000. Someone who invests $1,500 per month from age 40 to 65 at the same return ends up with about $1.3 million. The late starter contributed more total dollars, but they also ended up with nearly twice the wealth. Contribution intensity matters more than time when you're working with a 25-year runway. There's a psychological trap I need to address here because it derails more catch-up attempts than any mathematical challenge. Many people who feel behind develop what I call financial paralysis. They know they need to take action. They read articles. They watch videos about building wealth. They bookmark resources they never return to. Yet they never actually start because the gap between where they are and where they should be feels insurmountable. The shame of being behind creates avoidance, and avoidance makes the gap wider. Each month that passes makes the problem worse, which creates more shame, which creates more avoidance. This spiral needs to break. The way you break it is by taking one specific action within the next 48 hours. If you have high interest debt, that action is opening a balance transfer credit card with a 0% introductory rate and moving your balances. This immediately stops the interest from compounding against you and gives you a runway to pay down principal. If you have no debt but no savings, that action is setting up an automatic transfer of $200 per paycheck into a high-yield savings account. Automation removes willpower from the equation. The money moves before you can spend it. If you have savings but aren't investing, that action is logging into your 401k portal and increasing your contribution by 2%. Not someday. Not after you do more research. Today, one action, 48 hours. The momentum that follows a single step forward is often enough to sustain the entire journey. Motion creates motivation, not the other way around. Let me address the professional benchmarks because financial health and career health are deeply intertwined. Your career is the engine that powers everything else. Neglecting it while focusing only on budgeting and investing is like optimizing the fuel efficiency of a car with a broken engine. By 40, you should have developed at least one specialized skill that commands premium compensation. Generalists get replaced. Specialists get recruited. If you can't articulate in one sentence what you do better than 90% of people in your field, you have a positioning problem that needs solving. Think about it this way. A general marketing manager competes with thousands of other general marketing managers for every job opening. A marketing manager who specializes in customer retention for subscription software companies competes with maybe a few dozen people. Specialization reduces competition and increases your leverage in salary negotiations. You should also have a network that includes at least 5 people who could help you find a new job within 30 days if you lost your current one. Careers end abruptly sometimes. Companies close. Industries contract, managers change, and suddenly your position is eliminated. Your network is your insurance policy against these disruptions. Most people only network when they need something, which is exactly the wrong approach. The time to build relationships is when you don't need them. Reach out to former colleagues quarterly. Have coffee with people in adjacent roles. Maintain connections with recruiters even when you're not looking. This insurance costs nothing but a few hours per month. Furthermore, you should have some form of income diversification, even if it's modest. A small side business generating $500 per month. Rental income from a property. Dividend payments from an investment portfolio. Consulting work you do on weekends. Something that would keep flowing even if your primary paycheck stopped. Income diversification isn't about getting rich through side hustles. It's about reducing the catastrophic risk of job loss. If you lose your job and have zero other income sources, you're in crisis mode immediately. If you lose your job but have $1,500 per month coming in from other sources, you have breathing room to find the right next opportunity rather than taking the first desperate offer. For those watching this who already have financial stability, the question becomes different. The question isn't how to catch up. It's how to avoid the complacency trap that destroys so many people in their 40s. I've seen it repeatedly. Someone hits their late 30s in solid financial shape. They've been disciplined. They've done the right things. They feel like they've earned some comfort. Then lifestyle creep sets in. The house gets upgraded. The cars get nicer. The vacations get longer and more expensive. The kids go to private school. The restaurant budget triples. By 50, they've somehow managed to spend their way back to financial stress despite earning more than ever before. Their income doubled over the decade, but so did their expenses. They're right back on the treadmill, just running faster. The antidote to this trap is regularly recalculating your retirement number. Every time your lifestyle expands, your required nest egg grows accordingly. That bigger house doesn't just cost more to buy. It costs more to heat, maintain, insure, furnish, and landscape. It raises the floor on what you need to retire comfortably. That floor might have risen faster than your savings rate, which means you've actually moved backward while feeling like you've moved forward. Remember that dinner party from the beginning? Let me tell you what was actually happening at that table. The guy who maxed out his 401k for 12 years has about $350,000 saved. That's great. But he also has $600,000 left on his mortgage, a home equity line he tapped for renovations, and 2 kids heading to college in the next 5 years. He's not wealthy. He's leveraged. The woman with the rental property bought it at the peak of the market. Between the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and vacancy periods, she's losing $400 per month. She tells herself it's building equity, but the math doesn't actually work in her favor for another decade. The third person talking about their brokerage account milestone inherited $200,000 from a grandparent. They didn't build that wealth. They received it. And they've already spent $40,000 of it on lifestyle upgrades. Meanwhile, you're sitting there feeling like a failure because you're comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. This is the danger of dinner party finance. Everyone performs success. Nobody admits struggle. The comparison leaves you feeling worse about a situation that might actually be more solvable than theirs. So here's where we land. The benchmarks themselves matter less than the trajectory you're on. Someone at 40 with $50,000 saved but a 30% savings rate is in a vastly better position than someone with $200,000 saved and a 5% savings rate. The first person will overtake the second within a decade. Velocity matters more than position at this stage of the game. If you're ahead of where you expected to be, resist the urge to coast. The difference between comfortable retirement and early retirement is often just maintaining intensity for another 5 years when you could have relaxed. Those 5 years of continued aggressive saving could buy you an entire decade of freedom on the back end. If you're behind where you expected to be, recognize that you're standing at the most powerful wealth building moment of your life. Your earning potential is near its peak. Your expenses can be controlled if you choose to control them. Your timeline is still long enough for compound interest to work its magic. The person who starts aggressively at 40 often overtakes the person who started casually at 25. This isn't wishful thinking. It's basic mathematics playing out over a 25-year runway. 10 years from now, you'll either look back at this moment as the turning point when you finally got serious about your financial future, or you'll be having the same anxious feelings at the next dinner party when someone mentions their investment portfolio. The benchmarks aren't the point. What you do next is the point, and that part is entirely within your control.